of these storylines make any sense.
She-Hulk. It's the finale, but first I had an interesting comment under my last video from frequent commenter Goka, who came in to say about the Daredevil and She-Hulk fight scene where she bravely vanquished that evil car park. He asked, why didn't Daredevil just avoid her attacks and tell She-Hulk about the situation while fighting? And that's a very good question, Goka, so let's break down the fight scene. Daredevil wants to get away so he can chase Leapfrog, who's kidnapped Urkel. She-Hulk stops Leapfrog's car with Daredevil on the roof, and the following conversation takes place while they're fighting. You need to back off.
And waste this outfit? Eugene, get out of here.
You're making a mistake.
You made the mistake when you decided to mess with my client. Now I'm gonna whoop your ass.
She-Hulk then smashes the car park. My ass remains unwhooped. And yes, why did he do that? All Daredevil maybe had to say at the start of the fight was, not you need to back off, but instead, Leapfrog is the bad guy. He kidnapped Urkel. Well, maybe he shouldn't say that. He should use maybe instead the name of whatever that character's called. Luke. His name is Luke the Tailor, and I had to look that up on IMDb. Instead, they had Daredevil taunt her and start a fight for no real reason. Daredevil had to act completely out of character just to make that fight happen. Now we get on to the season finale proper. So how was it?
Man, what you think? How was it?
Well, episode 8 was maybe the best of the lot, and the finale was probably the worst episode in the whole series. Thank heavens, I have managed to finally finish reviewing this series, and it only took me... My god, has it been that long? I released my review of episode 1 of She-Hulk Attorney at Law on August 26th of last year, so I managed to get through this series and polish it off, and it only took me just over 4.5 months. In my defence, I got distracted by watching House of the Dragon instead. Then The Rings of Power. Then Hassan Piker and Ethan Klein's superfans being weirdos. Then Witcher Blood Origin. Then I got distracted by not wanting to watch She-Hulk. So finally I am finishing the She-Hulk arc because I can't imagine there are any more coming. I wouldn't rule it out, but I suspect She-Hulk will get a season 2, right after Disney finish Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy. So is the last episode any good? And no, it's garbage, whatever Simon Pegg had to say. And what has Hollywood been dosing Simon Pegg with? Likening this episode to Blazing Saddles. Simon Pegg, you used to be one of the good guys. You were in Black Books and Shaun of the Dead. So we start off and they do some weird parody thing. It's supposed to be a parody of the Hulk series that ran from 1977 through to 1982, starring Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. Despite that series being pretty cheesy, I went back and watched some of it and I still prefer it to She-Hulk. It at least had a certain innocence to it, and I missed that style of intro that the show had, where it would give you a plot synopsis at the start, so people could come in at any episode and still join in on the show. And at least Lou Ferrigno looked like a real human in it, as opposed to the CGI She-Hulk in this. Well, he kind of looked like a real human. As much like a real human as Lou Ferrigno could look. At this point in his life, he was maybe 70% by weight steroids, but hey, maybe he just had unbelievable genetics. And I think this intro is part dream sequence, part series recap. Maybe. I don't even know. But Jen is in a cell after getting arrested last episode for smashing up that theatre. And is that what she got arrested for? Because I don't even know that either. The guys with guns got there very fast. Jen started smashing up the place and they were there in what, a minute? Who gets police response time like that? Was the police station next door? She could be getting arrested for destroying that car park, or going through the roof of that building and squashing those guys. I have no idea. Because she doesn't have a secret identity in this show. When She-Hulk smashes a car park, the cops can turn up at Jen's door. And how is it okay that Jen's phone was filled with pictures of Captain America's bottom? Because if the genders were reversed, this would be getting called objectification. And if it's objectification when men do it, it's objectification when women do it too. It's either objectification for both, or it is for neither. Pick one. And that's without even getting on to what they did to Daredevil. They essentially rewrote his character so Jen could go to bed with him. And it gets far worse in this episode, because here the consent is extremely dubious. Again, and this is reminding me of the Wonder Woman 1984 thing again. It appears that a lot of people in Hollywood still think it's fine if a man doesn't consent. You can still mate with him, even if he's unconscious, just do it anyway. But they would not try to portray this as okay if it was directed towards a female character, even if apparently there were quite a few people in Hollywood that were fine if a woman didn't consent to, or if a child Corey Feldman didn't consent, as if he could. The clue to that is in the child part.
This is a mess. None of these storylines make any sense.
She-Hulk the finale, and where was I? Well, I was talking about how the show seems to feel entirely fine about objectifying men, up to and including Daredevil, and true story, while I was looking for a picture for a thumbnail, I found some truly amazing stuff. In many ways, I fell right down a rabbit hole. I came up with the idea of having a thumbnail about how they'd rewritten and objectified Daredevil, and watching She-Hulk made me start rewatching the Charlie Cox Daredevil and Netflix Punisher, and if you want something better than She-Hulk to watch either of those things, because season 1 of the John Bernthal Punisher was a work of art in comparison, and it's quite shocking how good it is in comparison to 2022 entertainment. I was going to use a racier picture of Daredevil than I did for the thumbnail, so innocent fool that I was, I typed raunchy Daredevil into a Google image search, and I was not expecting what I got. I was not expecting this. I was not expecting cartoons of Daredevil and the Punisher engaged in intimate rope play. Guys, why is the internet like this? This pair's story together in Daredevil was deep and profound, and you turned it into smut. I was not expecting pictures like this of Daredevil and the Punisher, and how do I feel about this? I mean, it isn't a very respectful treatment of the characters. I wasn't expecting to see Daredevil in chains with what looks like a bit between his teeth, riding the Punisher like a pony, but I suppose if they're having fun. And as an added treat, there will be more about Charlie Cox to finish this part up, and I will be finishing up with Daredevil's Black Widow, so stick around if you're intrigued by that. Jen's friends turn up at her cell, and oh great, Nikki's here. And in order to be free, for some reason, they're letting Jen go. But Jen now has to wear a suppressor, and she has to take a plea deal. Jen gets out, and her dad says it's okay. People go to prison every day. Also, Jen gets fired from the law firm. She can't get another job. She loses her house and has to move back in with her parents. And I reiterate, is this supposed to be a parody of feminism? Because this is the same woman from episode 1, the I can control my anger Bruce because I have to do it infinitely more than you woman. This is the woman from episode 1 who told her cousin she didn't need his help. She accused him of Hulk-splaining and then proceeded to completely screw her entire life up in the entire rest of the series. And she's not going to take any responsibility or accountability for any of her mistakes or misdeeds. Is this what feminism is now? Not wanting to be a scientist or a doctor and having to find the way blocked. Now it's everything is men's fault. Women are never accountable for anything, including their own actions, and empowerment is now Cardi B twerking at work and an OnlyFans selling nudes for $4.99. So Jen is trying to track down intelligentsia with Nikki's help, and Nikki is shown a video by Jen's mum of Jen acting like an idiot in college and dancing very badly. Jen is now unhappy that she can't be Hulk, and this is the same person from episode 1 who was unhappy that she'd been burdened with being She-Hulk, and again, this is far worse than the source material story that the writers casually discarded in order to make this. She wants to talk to somebody and Hulk isn't answering his phone, so Jen decides to go and visit Blonsky, who can maybe identify with her current predicament. Meanwhile, Nikki comes up with an idea. She uses the video of Jen dancing like an idiot to ingratiate herself with Intelligentsia by posting it to their forums. And what luck! Intelligentsia just so happen to have an event that very night, which Nikki then gets invited to. But since the event is all going to be men, Nikki instead sends the confirmed bachelor from the office, named Pug, short for Augustus Pug Pugliese, who apparently was a Dan Slott character. So Pug goes along, and Weirdo Todd is also there. The men stand around making strawmanned versions of arguments that the writers can't think of a pithy counter-argument to, until Todd drops the bombshell on Pug that he created Intelligentsia. He is the Hulk King. Meanwhile, Jen has arrived at Blonsky's, and what are the chances she turns up just at the moment that Intelligentsia are holding a large meeting at Blonsky's lodge? And I'm confused by all of this. What is the plot supposed to be? Is Blonsky supposed to have been behind this all along? Because the Wrecker is there at Blonsky's lodge too, and the Wrecker was trying to get the blood from She-Hulk for Todd earlier in the series. And at this point I realise it's like the writers don't even know what their own story is supposed to be. And it's funny I say that, because Jessica Gao is quoted as saying that the writers struggled with the finale. And it shows, because this series is a mess. The creatives don't seem to know how to tie any of the very disparate threads of their own story together. To finish this up, I would like to talk about this article about Charlie Cox, who played Daredevil, because it made me laugh. Charlie Cox was asked what he would want to see play out in the MCU for his character, and I'm just going to put this outrageous panel from the comics by the side of it, because this panel was another of the results of the rabbit hole I fell down earlier. Anyway, Charlie's reply was, I really like the Black Widow. The Daredevil Black Widow stuff, that relationship is really funny to me. I don't know why. I find it really funny and naughty at the same time. Other than that, it's difficult. The obvious one is Spider-Man, isn't it? That's the one I would have to get more time with Bullseye. We just really touched on that story and we were just gearing up for it before we weren't allowed to continue. I really enjoyed working with Wilson Bethel in that character. There's so many, but I think the obvious one is it would be really cool to get some Daredevil Spider-Man stuff. More stuff. So it transpires that Charlie Cox is hoping for naughty scenes with Scarlett Johansson, and I bloody bet you are, Charlie. And yeah, that sounds like a pretty good job, doesn't it? Getting paid to Scarlett Johansson. Well, I'm sure there will be quite a few applicants for that. And how do I get that job? Can anyone just apply? I wonder if it's too late to start a career in acting. And if you thought the ending to this part was racy, just wait until the intro for part 3, where I get on to the seedier side of Wonder Woman and her creator.
This is a mess. None of these storylines make any sense.
She-Hulk, the finale, and where was I? Well, I finished up last time talking about Daredevil tanning Black Widow's hide, and that was nice. And this is where we go further down the rabbit hole, because on the same internet page where I found the picture of Daredevil and Black Widow, I found something out that I'd half forgotten, and I'm going to have to be very careful in my choice of words here. So I wrote this long bit about Wonder Woman and her creator, and got to writing, inspired by the panel on screen now, but sadly it turned out to be far too long, which has become a running theme for me, so I've decided to make it a separate video that I will link below. It will be called The Seedy History of Wonder Woman or something. I haven't decided on a name yet. Anyway, where was I with She-Hulk? Tim Roth arrives in the hall, and he's going to give a self-improvement speech to intelligentsia. He gets a few sentences in, and Jen bursts in looking for him, and is surprised to see this collection of people together. Todd starts to taunt her, and admits that he hired Josh to seduce Jen, ruin her life and take her blood because Todd wanted Hulk powers and she never deserved them in the first place, and he chooses that exact moment to inject himself with the serum made from Jen's blood. And all of these are extraordinary coincidences because Todd did not know Jen would even be there. Was the plan for the meeting to take the Hulk serum in front of the crowd of his friends? That she would walk in seconds before this moment entirely by accident? Is that really what the showrunners are going with? In the whole continental United States, these people find themselves in the same place at this vital moment. Todd then turns into a Hulk and tries to attack Jen, and she's saved by Tim Roth. So is he there by accident as well? If Tim Roth was in on the plan, why would he save her? And this is where the series completely Amber Heards the bed. At this stage, I would not be surprised if the first draft of the script was written in crayon, because then Titania bursts in through the wall looking for a fight for no reason whatsoever. Then Hulk comes smashing through the roof for no reason as well, and wants to fight Abomination for daring to touch Jen, and this is all a mess. The writers don't know how to finish their story, because in truth, they never had one in the first place, and Jen breaks the fourth wall to say, this is a mess, none of these storylines make any sense, and that doesn't make it better.
This is a mess. None of these storylines make any sense.
Disney giving this series to Jessica Gao is looking like a Titanic mistake. But how could they go wrong? This is the woman, after all, who gave the world Pickle Rick. And as Jen asks the viewer, is this working for you? The viewer turns off in disgust, and I can empathise as they go back to Disney+. Jen is unhappy at this turn of events, so she breaks her inhibitor and turns into She-Hulk before breaking the fourth wall again, this time literally with her body, and goes into another Disney programme by crawling across the screen. A making of programme, so she can go and talk to the people writing the show that she's in. So she finds the She-Hulk writers, who are sat around talking, and one says, what do we get if the entirety of this second season is an extended dream sequence? And that is quite funny. I wouldn't go writing that second season just yet if I were you. The writers won't change the story for us, so She-Hulk goes instead to see someone called Kevin, the head honcho of the studio. On the way, some guards try to stop her, and why does she nearly end the guards? They were no threat to her, and couldn't ever really be, so why did she nearly rip that guy's arm off? Eventually she finds Kevin, and it's a robot that looks a lot like GLaDOS from Portal, a cringeworthy nod to Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, and Jessica Gao allegedly just wanted to put a ball cap on this robot, and it ended up causing an argument with Kevin Feige about it, because it didn't make sense according to Kevin. And Kevin, none of this show makes sense. If that was the standard that you had to adhere to, you would not have a She-Hulk series at all. So Jen convinces Kevin to change the plot of her story, and as a result, Todd loses the Hulk powers, Hulk was never there, and Jen also wants Abomination to be held accountable for breaching the terms of the ankle monitor. She also wants Daredevil back because, in her words, a woman has needs, and sorry, a woman doesn't have the right to naughty time with a man just because she has needs. We're on very dodgy territory here. Daredevil was on his way back to New York, where presumably he had business, and he's now back in California against his will. So for him to want to be there at all, Jen necessarily changed him as well, and he's now also Jen's boyfriend, also against his will, and all of this without his consent. But he now consents only because reality has been changed, and that's not romantic, that's rapey. It's like he's been roofied and he'll never even know. I don't know if that makes it better or far, far worse. And there's just so much wrong with this ending, because Titania never gets dealt with. Josh, the guy who went to bed with Jen, ghosted, seduced and betrayed her. He never gets his comeuppance. The showrunners instead seem to forget about him entirely, and his arc never gets resolved. Instead, Tim Roth's abomination gets punished for breaching the terms of his ankle monitor. A great crime indeed, but it's a thing that Jen just did as well. She did the exact same thing, but he's the only one that's going to be held accountable. She gets to walk away scot-free. Tim Roth has to be punished to hold himself accountable for what he's done. Something she markedly isn't doing for herself, so she's an enormous hypocrite. She just rewrote reality, so she didn't have to be held accountable for her own actions, or face any kind of repercussions. Jen could have rewritten reality to make Tim Roth a good guy. I mean, he already kind of was in this series. He's not done much wrong. But she could have changed his character so that he was always a good guy and never hurt anybody. Instead, she kept all of his crimes the same, including keeping all of the victims the same, and instead made him go to prison for it. And how far could she have gone with this reality change? Could she have theoretically brought Tony Stark back to life? Because he has a daughter without a dad now, and the MCU was a lot better with Robert Downey Jr. in it. In her universe, you're telling me that she has the power to change reality itself. She could have used it to bring back some of the people that just saved the universe. She could have used it to free her cousin from the crippling curse of the Hulk. She could have used it to reunite Tony Stark with his wife and daughter, to bring back Black Widow, to ask for world peace, to solve global warming. Nah. Instead, she has the power to change the world, and what she wishes for is a boyfriend. Jen in the source material was a good character. She was principled. This Jen is a moronic, selfish, narcissistic hypocrite. And you know, she's also a bit rapey. All great qualities in a hero, I'm sure we can agree. And then there's a big family meal, where Jen brings her new boyfriend Daredevil along. Hulk turns up with his new son that he had off screen, and Jen tells Daredevil that that's her cousin Bruce. And why? Are they seriously trying to tell me that people in this universe wouldn't know who the Incredible Hulk was? He saved the world multiple times at this point. Matt Murdock is from New York. The Avengers destroyed a lot of New York, including large parts of Hell's Kitchen, where Daredevil plies his trade. How would he not know who the Incredible Hulk was? Just no thought went into this rubbish. The writers either just do not care at all, or are stunningly incompetent. They consider themselves not caring about continuity, or even if their own story makes any sense at all, to be a joke. And since I watched this entire series, I guess the joke is on me.
Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?